Welcome to Untangled Politics. I'm your host, Thomas Mitchell, and this week I'm joined by my guest and one of my best friends, Zachary Solentano. Hey, Zach, how are you?
I'm good, Thomas. How are you?
I'm doing well. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself before we start this week?
Um, well, personally, I identify as a left-leaning moderate. Um, Lived in Florida for most of my life, so pretty familiar with Florida politics and such things. Yeah, that's about the extent of my political affiliation, sort of stuff.
What would you say is like your top priorities to you?
Top priorities to me are environmentalism and probably either healthcare or education.
I see. All right, well, let's get into this week's news. Okay. So on Monday, the House Democrats introduced a bill that would give millions of families at least $3,000 per child, advancing a key provision in President Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion of COVID 19 relief package in the form of a child tax credit. So the way it's going to be broken down is $3,600 per child under the age of 6, $3,000 per child age 6 through 17 for a single year, and the full payment is exclusively for single parents earning up to 75,000 and for couples earning around 150,000. So the payments are going to be like phased out in those thresholds, and the payments would go in like monthly installments for a full year starting 2031. So I guess what my before I say my opinion, I want to hear your opinion about this. And do you think it is too much? Do you think it's not enough? Do you think it's right? What is your raw opinions?
Um, well, what personally, I think that the I think the amount is fine for the situation given, and
Mhm.
quite frankly, I think it's been long overdue. Um, like obviously, it's not going to be enough, but the $600, which is what I'm not mistaken, that was what was given earlier this year, right? But during the
Mhm.
Trump administration, or last year, I should say,
Yeah,
during the Trump administration, that definitely wasn't enough to
right.
get people to a point where they could get through the rest of this pandemic, which still don't know when that's going to happen. I mean, obviously, Joe Biden is trying to get the vaccine out as much as he can and as a numerous amount as he can, but obviously, it's still going to take a while. And while $3,000 is not going to be enough for these families to live off of, it's still more than the $600. And I mean, if $3,000 is what people can get to live off of, it's gonna have to work because if we give any more, it's obvious it's pretty clearly gonna damage the economy for an even longer time than this already is
Mhm.
going to. But yeah, I think for the time given, I think it should be okay for now. But I don't. Obviously, this is a temporary
Yeah,
fix.
because like I know a lot of people are talking about like because this is not in this is something completely different than the stimulus checks. And I know like some people are saying that like the stimulus checks like it's too much money, that like people like Jeff Bezos doesn't need it. And like I understand that, but I think like something like this is like definitely centered towards like families, which it's obviously meant to be like a child tax credit. And I think I know some people think that we should be getting more than $1,400, but like I think I mean, I could see both sides of that argument, but I think this plan in particular is definitely like how I word this, more geared towards the families. Because I mean, I don't know about you, but I feel like people, especially families, need the money more, and if that means that like the 3,600 per child and 3,000, it depends like the age. I think it kind of goes towards the more important root of the issue, which is like there's definitely people in this country where they're not getting enough money and they're not like they're probably like having like days where they're like, all right, so what meal are we skipping today? And I feel like that's obviously like a situation no family nor child should ever be put in. So definitely this is focusing on the more dire need, which is like I said, the families and children. I mean, I have to say it'll be really hard for people to like not agree to this. I feel like it's as fair as it can be because it's eliminating people that don't need it and really, really focusing on the people who do need it, especially like for the children.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely see what you're trying. I definitely agree with you there. Like, I uh, obviously you said Jeff Bezos, but like, there's plenty of other people in this country who definitely don't need the $3,000 because, I mean, while there is a lot of people who are currently unemployed, there's still a good bit of people who are well off in the current scenario we are in, which is good, but also the amount of people who are unemployed and don't have money and can't put food on the table for their families is still alarming to say the least.
Yeah, and the fact that it's happening in the richest country in the world, that there's families and children that's going day by day skipping meals because they can't afford it, I
Yeah.
think that's a shame.
It,
And yeah, I think like I said, this is definitely although like it was the House Democrats who introduced it, I find it like it's still limiting in the sense of not everyone gets it. And quite frankly, it should be like that because I mean there's some, like I said, like the Jeff Bezos argument. Like Jeff Bezos doesn't need $3,600 for a child. If he, I don't even know if he has young kids, but I mean, he's very well off. And
yeah.
this definitely goes for like the more like I wouldn't even say it's like lower class because I mean, obviously, like it goes up to 75,000 and 1,500 or $150,000. I think it's more of like middle to lower class, which is really where it should be focused on.
Yeah, I agree. I can't imagine a scenario where they plan on giving the money to anything more than people who are less than the middle class. And even then, like there's definitely going to be there definitely is going to have to be like a more specific boundary, like people who are making uh more than $100,000 a year and households that are making more than like $100,000 a year, they probably, don't need it because obviously this is meant to be for people who are like in a really tough spot. Like they're
Yeah, the
not
people
being
who
able to
need
pay.
it.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
people who are can't even pay their rent, people who are, as you said, skipping meals a day, like stuff that
Hmm.
really shouldn't be a problem, but obviously it is because of how bad this situation is right now, and like obviously waiting for the vaccine to roll out
Yeah.
for everyone.
Because like I feel like the people who don't support this is like the people who don't like thankfully you and I are in a situation where we don't have to like worry about if we're gonna eat that like that night or so. But I mean, we've also been associated with people who aren't as fortunate. And I feel like the people who don't support this, I feel like they don't understand like how there's definitely a large percentage of people in this country who aren't like getting the proper money and nutrients and all that for like them to survive. And when it comes to like the money, the 1.9 trillion, all I have to say is like we are so quick on a dime to give as much money to the military because they are a necessity. And I agree, like the military is a necessity, but also like children being fed
Well,
and not
to
like
be
skipping
honest,
meals
like right
is also
now,
important.
like I don't mean to interrupt, but like to
Mhm.
be honest, like right now, it's not like we're using the middle military. Like for one year, cut down military spending just a little bit, just to make room for this money, which could benefit everyone in the country and keep us from entering another possibility of nearing a Great Depression or a Great Recession. You know,
Yeah.
like I like even like I know this is like something like Democrats are really pushing for, but even Republicans, like the argument can be made for Republicans to encourage us too, because if we don't do this, then the economy is going to be in shambles for several years past Biden's like term in office. into the next candidate, whoever it may be, and they're going to be dealing with the aftermath. Like, obviously, Trump was dealing with the economy brought upon him by the Obama administration, which lasted 8 years. Obama dealt with a recession in his presidency for the two terms, and it resulted in an economy that was well better off during Trump's administration. And now Trump has left an economy that is in the downturn for Biden.
Yeah.
And obviously Biden has to pick up for where Trump failed to handle the situation like last year when the pandemic was starting to become a pandemic, you know?
Yeah, this is what happens when you don't like act accordingly. Like because
Yeah.
it was such pushed off and such. I mean, now it's I mean, some people may say like, "Oh my God, it's 1.9 trillion." But I mean, if we only invested earlier, we wouldn't have to have spent 1.9
I
trillion
mean, if we
dollars.
were just more aggressive, if
Exactly.
the Trump administration was just more aggressive with this, like I know that some people really don't like wearing masks, but it's like there's so many things you could do to not wear a mask but still keep people from getting sick.
Mm-hmm.
And now the funny part is it's people who are like near your age and my age that are
Mm-hmm.
becoming the problem. Like people who are like going out to parties and doing this stuff.
Yeah.
That are like really causing a problem, which is like the real reason why this is still going on. Because it like if people weren't impatient, if they could just sit in their house for like a month, maybe even 2 months, we can get this out of the way, nip it in the butt. And if there's still cases popping up, handle it on a local basis.
Mm-hmm.
And if that were the scenario, like if people could just be patient for like a month, 2 months, then we wouldn't even need to be having this conversation about, oh, should we give $3,000 to people who can't feed their families and can't pay the rent and are about to get evicted from their apartment, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Well, on that topic of money, I know something that's gonna make some people really happy and some people weak to the knees. But I don't know if you saw, but one of the representatives, Pramila Jayapal, she announced that the House was able to put in the COVID package a $15 minimum wage. And if it's passed, it's projected that it will raise wages for 27 million low wage workers and bring more than 1 million people out of poverty. And I guess like what my opinion about it is, I first off, I think the $15 minimum wage, I think it's long overdue. And especially now where we're talking about there's people like not have enough money and such. I mean, it's true. I mean, I know that some people who listen to this and some people like just in general, like you can't live off of a minimum wage job. I mean, maybe you can like live off of it if you're like living at home with your parents and such and it's just your spending money, but like in the real world like there's definitely people who need the money, especially minimum wage, because they don't either have like a proper education or so, or not really proper, but just they couldn't really afford to go to college or so, so they got like minimum wage jobs. And I mean, like I said, $15 is way overdue. In my opinion, it should be more. But it's just it fascinates me that there's still like people who say like the minimum wage shouldn't be $15. It should be like lower, and it should incentivize people to work harder to make more money. So yeah, that's just my spiel on it. But what's your spiel?
Well, to be honest, like there's several arguments that I can understand. Like $15 is a pretty steep uptake. It's 100% more, if I'm not mistaken, than the current minimum wage, which is 750, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
So, like, take that in perspective. Like, there's like most people, like, there's a lot of people who work minimum wage. They're like high schoolers who are just getting a job to make some extra money so they can buy whatever they want so they don't have to ask their parents for money. But there's also the people who are working minimum wage because they literally can't get another job. And it's like, I agree with you. Like, it doesn't make any sense how people are expected to be able to live off of $7.50 an hour. They'll work like maybe 12 hours a day, 14 hours or something at like McDonald's or whatever, and making
Hmm.
minimum wage. They'll barely make $80 or something like that. Not even. and they're expected to live off of that when their rent per month could be like $1,000 or something like that. And,
Yeah.
like, just to put in perspective, when I was working for my uncle cleaning pools, I got $15 an hour.
Mhm.
I got $15 an hour. Now, $15 an hour for me, I spent that pretty quick. Like, obviously I don't have to pay for rent and stuff, but I still went out to get food. I bought groceries for my family. I did all that stuff. And a 17-year-old was spending a good chunk of that money. Like, after he made it a week in the week, after a week of working, I'd make a couple, like maybe over $100, something like that.
Mhm.
I would spend nearly all of that. And I wasn't even doing all of the things in my house. So
Yeah.
that should put it in perspective. Like, I'm not even doing all the major heavy lifting in terms of purchasing power. And I was still spending nearly all of it.
Yeah. I know some people have the argument of like, well, what do you like? I know like places like McDonald's and Chick-fil-A and Chipotle and like all these like mega billion-dollar corporations, like they probably have the capacity to afford a $15 minimum wage. And some people bring up like, well, what about like small businesses and such? And that's the part where I'm a little torn because like to my knowledge, there's not really like clear understanding about the $15 minimum wage. So like I don't know if that's going to be paid off for like raising taxes. I don't know if that's going to make prices go up. But I know like certain places like one of the Norwegian countries, it might have been Norway, but what they did to accommodate for their raising of minimum wage was like let's just say like there was a McChicken and it's like $1 normally and then they raise it like 10 cents. Like 10 cents doesn't sound like a lot, but like if it adds up, it allows people to make more money off of their product, which then in turn could just pay their workers. So I don't really know how to iron out the minimum wage debate. Like I said, I'm all for it, but I'm definitely more of like I'd rather see the fine print of how do we get there. So that's where I'm a little
Yeah,
uh
I agree.
confused. Yeah.
Um, yeah. Like, obviously, like, my biggest stipulation with this is, as you said, how do we get there? Like, because obviously these minimum wage jobs are not people's endpoints for where they want to get jobs. Obviously, everyone wants to make more money, so they don't have to work minimum wage at these jobs that they don't really like. They're just working there simply to get money, which they aren't even getting a lot of. So that's why they work, so they can get
Hmm.
a better job. But as you said, like, these businesses are gonna have to increase the prices of goods. How much is that? Beats me. Like, these billion-dollar corporations, see, they could probably spare the extra few cents it would cost because they're a billion-dollar corporation, like,
Hmm.
they're they can afford to, like, charge more
They can
because if they
literally
charge,
cut their CEO's like salary just by like
yeah,
a
I
small
mean,
fraction. They can like literally afford everyone's minimum wage to go up.
like that, and on top of that, they could charge, as you said, a couple extra cents for each food item on the menu, and
Hmm.
it'll eventually add up to be able to pay for more, like, workers more. And also, this $15 minimum wage it isn't going to happen instantaneously. It's going to be a build
Over
up.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be a build up. Like, we're going to get there eventually, because obviously we need to see how the economy reacts to increasing the prices of goods, and with that is going to come probably some issues with
Yeah.
possibly inflation and stuff, because we're increasing the prices of goods to get everyone able to be making more money. And the problem with that, obviously, is going to be how are the local business going to be affected? Not the chains, not the big corporations, the people who can't really afford all that much to be paying their workers all that much more. You know,
Hmm.
like, I would really like I would really like to see how that's going to pan out for them, because, like these local businesses, like restaurants in Orlando and other big cities that are just one restaurant, maybe a couple throughout the state, maybe the city. I don't know how they would be able to manage to pay their workers more. This is outside a pandemic scenario, obviously. Like
Right.
I don't see I don't know how they'd be able to pay their workers more if they're a local business and they don't have an influx of cash from all over the country, like McDonald's or Chipotle or Chick-fil-A has. Like
Hmm.
these big corporations who are getting money from like everywhere. But like a perfect example is like a taco place in Orlando. Like I don't know how they would be able to manage to pay their workers more because there's only like two restaurants that I know of.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, I don't think people are going there hundreds of thousands a day. Maybe at most they're getting a couple thousand
Yeah.
customers a day, And this is just talking about obviously the food industry, not even discussing like the
Other
industry,
like
like
industries.
the other yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Like I don't know how this could affect like the technology industry with like industries and stuff,
Hmm.
or with like um what's it called, clothing manufacturers, clothing stores, those sort of businesses. Like I have no idea
Yeah.
the
It's
implications of increasing minimum wage for them.
I feel like the businesses that's going to be affected is any of them that doesn't already pay like above $15 as their minimum wage. Because I know some places, like I believe some Amazon positions, like the minimum wage is like over 15 or maybe at $15. So when you raise it, you don't really have to worry about that. Like all their work is already getting like $15. But yeah, I'm no economist. And I feel like that's another reason why some like conservative, like fiscally conservative people aren't on board yet, is there's not really like a unified plan to get there. Like I don't think that they're against like raising the minimum wage because they know that it's not as like a lot of money, but before they put their put like pen on the paper, they want to see like, all right, how do we get there?
Quite honestly, I feel like they would be more on board with it if it weren't $15. Like if we decided to raise it to like even $10, which I'm not saying that's enough to get people out of poverty because it isn't.
Hmm.
It's not enough for people to pay the rent because cities are getting more expensive.
Yeah.
Um, it's not enough, but they would probably be on board with a less amount because $15, it's two times what the minimum wage is now, which is a big jump.
Yeah.
And obviously, going from where we are now to there, as we've discussed, it's not it like I don't know the implications of doing that because
Hmm.
obviously there's going to be major changes with the pricing of goods and all that stuff.
Yeah. Plus, it's a lot harder to like make it $15 across the country because like $15 in like Los Angeles is nothing compared to like $15 in uh like the middle of West Virginia. So like I know some people say like it should be based off of like the state's uh like standard of living, I guess you could say. But I mean, I again, like I said, I do believe that the minimum wage should be raised, but I feel like it's such a like tightrope issue because there's not really like I can definitely see the different points, but like I said, I want to see like a plan, and that's why I feel like I'm lacking, or I feel like lawmakers are lacking. Is like I think we all agree, we just want to know how we're gonna get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, finally, I want to talk about something that I know you and I are very passionate about, and that is Impeachment, the sequel. So, on Tuesday, the second impeachment of Donald Trump started with the House managers and his lawyers arguing for the legality of the trial, even though he is a private citizen right now. So, I don't know about you, but obviously I love politics, so I was a dumbass who watched it for 4 hours. But after 4 hours of the first day of the trial, it was decided in a vote of 56 to 44 that the trial is legal and can continue. So, what this means is that all 50 Democrats and only 6 of the 50 Republicans voted for impeachment. Those 6 are Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Mitt Romney of Utah, Ben Sasse of Nebraska, and Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania. And although you need 67 votes to impeach Trump, it doesn't look too favorable that he will be found to be kicked out of office for life, to not even be able to run. And I mean, I know some people uh, have different opinions that what I'm about to say, but I feel like especially in the day of like social media, like we all saw what happened on January 6th. We all saw the different vantage points, whether people actual mobsters like recording or live streaming them at the Capitol. I watched some of the video that the house managers used, and like there's literally people like wanting to literally assassinate certain politicians, and they're all crediting like Donald Trump sent us, et cetera, et cetera, even though probably Donald Trump didn't explicitly say Joe Smith to go to the Capitol. I still believe he is what the impeachment says, incited violence. And I'm not gonna lie, it does disappoint me that 44 Republicans believe that the impeachment trial is a sham. And all those different reasons, a lot of the reasoning is that Donald Trump's a private citizen. He's not even president anymore. But one of the points that they brought up was he did it while he was president. And he literally did it like in the last few weeks of office. So it sets a dangerous precedent that like, oh, so in the last few weeks as president, like you could do whatever the hell you want and you won't get in trouble because you'll be a private citizen. And I mean, I honestly thought that this country would have like a rally behind the flag. Like we all saw, well, a lot of people saw what happened in 9/11, and no one like thought like, well, I mean, it's a little bit different. Like no one said that. Like we all saw like something so egregious and like people lives lost happen on national television in 2021. And the fact that some people like either defend it or say like Donald Trump shouldn't be impeached is honestly it's fucking disgusting, to be honest. And I don't know, I could ramble on this for hours, but I mean the fact that so many people believe that what he did was wrong, but 44 Republican senators are going to decide that this man gets acquitted and shouldn't be tried is disgusting, to say the least. And I wanted to see what your opinion is.
Um, I do definitely agree with you. What I was watching some of the impeachment trial earlier before we
Hmm.
started recording this, and one of the people who was arguing that Trump should be impeached made a pretty good point. He was saying that Trump didn't do anything to stop what happened. In fact, he let it happen. If you
Hmm.
recall that day, I remember you messaging me and be like, "There's people storming the Capitol," and I was like, "What?" And I
Hmm.
looked at my phone, all over social media. Trump supporters are storming the Capitol, and Donald Trump during this, nowhere to be found. He didn't send the National Guard. He didn't tell them to stop until several hours later, until people had been shot, until police officers had been hurt, until people died. It wasn't until after all of that that he put a sorry ass Twitter video of saying, "We love you. You're very special. Go home."
Yeah.
He didn't condemn it. He didn't say it was bad, even though people died. Even though several months ago during BLM, he was like, "I support police officers." He did not say anything about how the police officers were blatantly disrespected, let alone the fact that our country was disrespected. The process of electing someone had been violated.
Hmm.
The fact that it had been violated, he didn't say anything about it. He let it happen. And to me, it's unforgivable. Like how the like Republicans are just completely okay with it. And it's this, I want to say it's like this cult mentality that they have, that they're perfectly okay with it, that they've become so far away from what the GOP was, which quite frankly, I would like to think that the GOP during Obama's administration was much more about the economy
Mm-hmm.
than it was about social issues. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I don't remember. Like, obviously, I'm not gonna say this wasn't a thing. I remember people saying horrible things about Obama, like hang Obama, like calling Obama the N word,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. But like, it was never about Obama being an African American president. It was more about the economy, like, oh, Democrats are socialist or whatever, like stuff like that. But now it's like it's like becoming like this sort of thing where like common phrases, party over country, like you're choosing your party over this country. And like
Mm-hmm.
these Republicans have become so enthralled by Trump's, I don't even know what you call it, like Trump's attitude, what he's done,
Mm-hmm.
like what he hasn't done. It's that sort of stuff. And it's
Yeah.
absurd to me how they have just completely brushed it under the rug, and they're okay with the fact that while he was still president, he isn't like, he did something that no president has done. He's been impeached twice now. Like, you can't ignore the writing on the wall at this point. Like,
Mm-hmm.
when more than half of your country is saying, like, yeah, what happened was our president's fault, and the representatives of the citizens are blatantly ignoring their constituency, like, there's a bigger problem at hand when you
Yeah.
look at it that way.
I saw also one of the senators, I think it was Senator Roy Blunt. I think he's from Missouri. He literally said like this was today, like we're recording this on Thursday or Wednesday, and he literally said like I'm not gonna I don't have the whole quote, but he literally it was like, where was this energy over the summer when those protests were happening? I was like, oh my God, like seriously, like shut the fuck up. Cause I mean, over the summer literally was like something that was so universally accepted that like systemic racism, especially like in the policing force, is very evident. We all saw the George Floyd and
Like,
video and
if I may
such.
interject for a second, like what even is more absurd about people like comparing that protest to the BLM protest, you shouldn't be against the idea of anti-racism. You should be against the idea of anti-America, you know?
But like, I mean, over the summer, I mean, some like protests and such was uh a little more violent than others. Like some people like to address like Portland and such, but like the difference was like in Portland, like or just in general. I mean, no one like literally had the like soul mentality of literally like overthrowing the United States government and going against like democratic ideals. And
Yeah,
then
it
on
was
top
more
of it
so.
all, like, I mean, as much as like so many people had so much fair points to like show their disdain for like um racial injustice and such. I mean, no one in their bright mind went to DC and like took over and like tried to topple the government to get their way. Like no one did that, but literally like Donald Trump and his little followers are all went to Washington DC, literally like took upon themselves to feel that they had the like authority to overthrow an election, overthrow a government, and to literally like ransack like the people's house. And it's I don't know, people who say that they are so inept of thought. I feel like they don't understand, like they truly don't understand what happened this summer. They don't understand what happened January 6th. And they just, I mean, I think it's literally them thinking like I want my thing and I want it now. And I'm scared of like I'm scared of the facts. I'm scared uh that these people are right and that they shouldn't get what they want, that they are like somehow some way like lesser beings than I am. Or like you look at January and it's like, although Joe Biden like clearly won the election, I'm still gonna fight for the guy who actively makes my life better but at the expense of minorities. Like it's just I mean, you could boil it down to a race issue too, because I mean, it's just if you can't understand what happened this summer and try to relate it to what happened in January, like
Yeah,
you are so absent-minded in this society, and it's disgusting.
yeah. Well, I definitely agree with you. Like, obviously, I'm white. There's things in this country that I won't be able to understand because I'm white, and I've had certain privileges that
Hmm.
other races definitely have not had the privilege of having. And I can confidently say having to worry about, being shot by police officers because of my skin color, not one of them. And the fact that there are people in this country who had to worry about that and were trying to fight for, not having to worry about them being killed because of their race, you know.
Hmm.
I like the fact that there are people against that idea, that's absurd to me.
Yeah,
Now,
because
that
even if it doesn't affect you, like, or not necessarily affect you, but like you're treated differently than other people. The fact that you're able to like see it in broad daylight and show support to the people who are affected definitely means a lot than to just turn a blind eye and act like nothing's wrong.
Yeah. And what's absurd is like, as you said, they make comparisons between the two protests, even though
Hmm.
there was
One's more
protests for
violent than the
BLM
other.
and there was a couple riots for BLM, several riots, and for the one protest for save the election or whatever, it was
Hmm.
violent and people died. So
Exactly.
in comparison, in pure statistics, statistically speaking, 100% of the save the election protests were violent. And I don't know what the exact percentage of BLM protests are, but it's less than 100%. And as far as I know, there
No one
was
stormed
nobody,
like buildings or so and killed people for it.
I mean, yeah, there were some riots where buildings were destroyed and local businesses were destroyed. And I can definitely empathize with those people who were had their livelihoods affected by the riots in BLM.
Hmm.
That sucks. But they weren't trying to overthrow the government. They were fighting for such a simple thing that you would think we would have figured out in 2020, which is racial equality in the
Yeah.
justice system. But the people at the Capitol in January 6th, they were fighting for something that was decided by well over 100 million people.
Hmm.
Like, I don't know if these people don't realize, but there's like well over 200 million people in this country. So maybe it's not such a crazy idea to think that just maybe, the majority of people don't like Trump. And the majority of
Hmm.
people actually did vote for Joe Biden, which is exactly what happened. The
Yeah.
majority of people voted for Biden, but they obviously, the fault is again on Trump for
Hmm.
putting the blame on the election system, which, by the way, has not been complained about, like, other than the fact that for years the election system was racially biased.
Hmm.
That was fixed, and from the period of about 19 like the 1900s, it was more or less fixed, aside from the fact that there's poll taxes and such. Then the poll taxes were gotten rid of. The election system
Hmm.
was not complained about for 50, 40, 60 years, but that
Hmm.
around that time frame. And now, only now, when he loses the election, is it a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, we could go on this for
Yeah.
literal hours, but I mean, like I said, I mean, all I have to say is by the time I record next week's video, I think the trial will be done. And all I have to say is like whatever happens next week and the vote that happens is going to solidify I wouldn't even say like it solidifies the Democrats' future because I feel like everyone kind of knows what the Democratic senators are going to do. But like, I feel like specifically the Republican Party, they have like, they're at, like, I feel like they're at a crossroads right now where they could, although you can never truly fix your past, acknowledge that like this guy was crazy and he shouldn't be in our politics anymore, or that you like welcome him and wanting him to still continue his political career. I mean, that's the choice that they have right now. And I mean,
I think
it's
it's just insane, like the fact that they like even though he's out of office and they were afraid because pretty much if they disagreed with him during his term, they would get deplatformed
yeah.
because, you know, they didn't believe in the majority leader, which was Trump, because Trump is the majority leader of the
Hmm.
Republicans. But now he's not, which like begs the question, what are they afraid of? Like their constituency? It doesn't matter now because Trump is out and their constituency, quite frankly, it isn't going to care about this because whether or not they vote to like I would say I think it's like 40% of Republicans in this country. So 40% of Republicans in this country, then the additional Democrats, that's like probably well over 70 to 80% of the available voters, the available
Hmm.
constituency. That's a very large majority of this country. And when a very large majority such as that believes that this impeachment is justifiable and right, like the question becomes like, why won't these people serve their constituency? Like, I don't understand what these people have to benefit from doing this anymore. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's just something we'll have to see in the following days.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Well, on that note, it looks like that's all we have for this week, but I want to thank you for joining me this week. And we definitely had our few things to say for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It was my pleasure to be on.
Thank you so much. If you're still listening, please make sure to like and subscribe if you're all the way here and enjoyed it. And make sure to check my channel to see all the information of things to follow, whether that's Instagram, Twitter, or all the different platforms I'm on. Thank you for watching and have a great day.